Yes. Today I am back to share another couple's storyline for you guys, and this one is between Twila and Ivana on this amazing new series that I just recently came across with. But before we get into further details, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. So before we get into the storyline of the two, let's break down the series plot. So it is set in 1977. The series follows two American women, Bia and Tawila, whose lives are abandoned when their CIA operative husbands pass away in a mysterious plane crash, known in intelligence speak as Ponies. What is the definition of that? Person of no interest. They leverage their, perceived insignificance to become undercover operators and undercover a vast conspiracy in actually, trying to make sense on what really happened to their husbands and find out the truth about everything. So they actually ends up joining the CIA in order to find out the truth of what really happened to their husbands and, their whole situation. So the show features a central lesbian love story between Twila and Ivana. Their relationship unfolds against the high stakes backdrop. Yes, so more of the story, like I said, in this case, Twila, she's one of the main characters that at the beginning of the series we can definitely see that she kind of has a very difficult relationship with her husband. It's like they argue a lot, they are like in a toxic relationship, they care for each other but they don't care for each other. It's like their marriage are broken but they know they have to stay together but they also want to stay together. So there's just a whole lot that is going on. So when she finds out, regarding the situation of her husband passing away, it was kind of a very tricky situation for her to handle because she was sad, she was upset, but also at the same time, she also had a very different feeling compared, obviously, to her other, how can we say, main character as well, which is, Bia. But later on, you can see when the CIA hired them too in order, to go back to the location where they were at the beginning to find out the truth about their husbands there. So when, we can clearly see that Ivana comes in the picture slowly but surely and they start, to create this very unexpected bond that eventually turns into something a little bit more, in this case, romantic. Who is Ivana? So Ivana, she is more of the story, to make a long story very short. She is a local, of the city. She's very well known. She goes around very well. Like I said, more of the story. She's a local woman that works at, a local market where she's basically sells and resells, vintage products, when it comes to, just, trying to make a living for herself. She's very well known in the city. Everybody knows her. She has a lot of connections. She has a lot of knowledge about, the city and where to find people and where to go to find answers. So that's how, she and Tawila get close to one another. So Tawila will go to the market to go seek information. And obviously she and Ivana, would get into this conversations where, Ivana will always, ask, money in order to give Tawila information. So every time Tawila she needed information regarding a place, regarding people, regarding locations, regarding anything just to know about the city, Ivana would be her person to go get that information. So that is how the two basically start to bond and slowly but surely start to spend a little bit more time together until one day, when things definitely took a big massive turn. That's where we can clearly see that they were already like kind of low key, not flirting, but they were low key bonding, and then, until this very moment where, we can see a very big shift in their situation. So we can see that, Tuwila, she went to ask information to Ivana, and Ivana said, okay, I'm gonna give you all the information you need, but I want you to go out, to go have a drink with me. And obviously Ivana was caught by surprise because Loki she did want to go, but also she never been out with a woman. She never been in this situation with a woman before where a woman is asking her to go out for a drink on that type of level because she's still like grieving her husband passing and trying to investigate what is going on with her husband. But she have decided to take, Ivana's invitation. So when the day comes for them to go finally to go have their drink and to go spend time together, you can see that, Tawila actually ends up, not in this case appearing to the date because she had something else to do, and also at the same time she was nervous, so she kind of was like, okay, I'm not gonna show up. She basically stood up in this case and left Ivana hanging. Ivana wasn't very happy. Later on you can clearly see that Twila, she was going through her situation. She was doubting if she really wants to do this because she knew she would basically have or fall for Ivana. So she wasn't sure if she wanted to take the next step. But later on, she had finally decided to give, her and, Ivana's situation a shot. But, things didn't work out as planned, because then later on, you can see that she ends up, setting up this very cute date for her and Ivana. But, Ivana in this case just, returned the favor, and she also didn't show up. So basically, like tick for take, you didn't show up to our first date, so I'm also not going to show up when you invite me. So, I kind of did, like, yeah, it is fair. If you stood as somebody and they stood you up, it's fair, So there was a situation until later on, that's where things, finally took a big turn. So later on, you can see that Twila, she started to ask, Ivana for help because they needed information from this guy to go figure out where the cameras were set up for the investigation that they were doing. So, Ivana was like, okay, I'm gonna help you out. And also because, Ivana's friend convinced her also to help, Twila. So she was like, okay, my friend asked me to help you, so I'm here to help you. So that's when they started to get close. And during that moment, while they were figuring out the location of the cameras, they had to play a role. And then during that moment, we can see the two, getting intimate with one another and finally having that very, 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 very spicy moment together. And from that moment on, you can see that, they were just like, now that we hooked up, now that we had an amazing time together, what is next? But obviously, after they hooked up, you can see that they basically were distant from one another because each of them are doing their own thing. But you can slowly see that Twila, she was starting to get jealous. So if Ivana was talking to other women, later on, she actually ends up inviting her out, to go ahead to go to a concert. At the beginning, Ivana was like, okay, I might sell this ticket, but later on, she actually ends up deciding to go. And when she went to the concert, she and, Tawila, they spent, the day together, going to the concert and having like nice conversations and all of that. Obviously, at that point, you can see that the two definitely took things a little bit further by having a little bit more of deep conversations and just getting along pretty well until the very end, which is the last episode, episode 8. You can clearly see that, Ivana helped Tawila out of a situation that she was in. And then basically, Tawila just told her, once all of this is over and I survive from all of this, I'm gonna call you. And then Ivana told her, like, hey, I don't have a phone. How are you gonna call me? And then that was basically the last interaction that they had with one another. But so far, good. If there is a season 2, I definitely do feel like we will see a little bit more of them because I do feel like the connection, is very good. I definitely do appreciate, the fact that they could come together. If you guys want more details, I will highly recommend going to Peacock. It has one season available and it has 8 episodes. And yes, this one is a brand new 2026 series that I will highly, 1 trillion percent recommend you also go ahead, go watch, go support. It's very good. It's very long, but it's very interesting at the same time. So don't miss out on the storyline between Twila and, in this case, Ivana. It's 100 trillion percent worth the watch. But before we go, I also want to say, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And goodbye.